Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is your host today, Holkistan, bringing you the Stani Army verdict. I'm standing in for Imi on the show today, and what a show we've got for you today. From what was happening yesterday, I think there was a lot of Pakistan fans had an emotional night last night, where we had Crawley getting a massive double century, and then we closed off on 24 for three. We had Babar Azam being out to the last ball of the day. And I don't think not many Pakistan fans could have thought that we were going to be in the position that we're in today. What did you make of that today, Doctor?
Yeah, hi, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. So obviously, I was on the show yesterday. I thought, as I think a lot of teams would, I thought we'd kind of be rolled over today. I thought we'd maybe be bowled out, maybe between lunch and tea, maybe by tea, and probably for not very many. And then obviously we lost the wicket pretty early this morning as well. But obviously, the way that we fought back, and obviously as an early man of the day, the way he played was brilliant. And that's all we want as fans. We just want to see a little bit of fight and to not kind of roll over, and we didn't. So that was just if you take today, just in and of itself, today was a good day. Obviously, the context of the game, we're still miles behind, but you can't moan, you can't complain after that performance from us today.
Yeah, I think that was just brilliant the way that they both got stuck in. I mean, the way that Azhar Ali played after all the pressure he's been going through. I mean, even if you put the captaincy aside, he's not had many. He's had a couple of starts, I think, this series, but he's not gone on, and that's what we wanted him to do. And he showed the captain's innings. He came in when we were down, when we were in trouble. He held the innings together. I think it was important that he was in when Fawad Alam was there as well, because he had a massive amount of pressure on him, and I think it would have definitely helped having his captain at the other side of him. What do you think, Doctor?
Yeah, no, agree with that, definitely. And even I think midway through Ezra's innings, even when he got to about 40 or 50 today, he had already faced more balls than pretty much the whole of our top order, even though he hadn't got as many runs as everyone. So even in the last game when he struggled, he got I think it was the last game, he got 20 off about 74, 75. It gives him a chance, doesn't it? If you're at the crease, you might score runs. You might not, but you've got more chance scoring runs at the crease than in the pavilion. Again, just comparing with someone, I'm not just going to bash up, Shafiq or anything like that. Just by comparison, Asad Shafiq, the whole tour has faced 85 balls. So he's not even staying at the crease. Whereas Asad at least is giving himself a chance. And today he just hung in there long enough. He was scratchy at the start, really scratchy, but he fought, he stuck in, and he got his rewards at 141 not out. So and as you say, to be there when Fawad was there was important as well. They had a nice little partnership. He'll be disappointed. He got out to a bit of a nothing ball really from Bess. One that he probably could have left alone. But it's better than 0 off 4. So I think he'll be a little bit encouraged by what happened today as well.
Yeah, that goes nicely to our first question that we have here from Tyrell Odain, where it says, I've got a question. What is up with Fawad Alam's batting stance? I think that's something that's been asked by a number of people. And what I found interesting today was the commentators were going through it and they were looking at it as well. So it was really interesting hearing them discuss it as well. And there are obvious comparisons to Chanda Paul.
Yeah.
And they also talked about how Fawad Alam's batting stance has evolved from back in 2009 and 10 to 2014. And now it's completely side on, really. But whatever works for him. In the domestic scene, he's been making the runs. I think he's got a 50, 55 average, hasn't he?
He's been scoring really heavily in domestic cricket. And I mean, it's a point that if there's time, I'll come on to about our batsmen in domestic cricket in a bit anyway. But no, he's been doing really well in domestics. And I've said before on here, I don't care what his stance is like, what his technique is like. If he gets the runs like Chanderpaul did, I mean, there are loads of players out there with odd techniques. Look at Burns. I mean, the way he kind of cocks his neck and looks kind of towards mid-on when he's batting. It's whatever works for you. So I've no issues with his stance. At some point, he's going to need a score, though. That's the thing. I mean, so far it's 0 and 21, so he's going the right way. But at some point, he's going to need a score, or the question marks are going to be there about his place in time.
Yeah, what he's done so far, though, because chances are that he might not get another innings now. So because of the rain. So Imi, I'm going to come to you on this one. Do you think that he's done enough to go to New Zealand?
Are we talking about Fawad here?
The one and only.
Yeah, I think after waiting 10 years, and everyone knows, I don't think it's a hidden secret, I'm not a fan of Fawad, but after waiting 10 years, I think it's only right that he gets at least 4 or 5 tests in a row. So the New Zealand series, he should get, and if we have the Bangladesh test match in between, he should get that. Because you need to end the debate either way. You need to end it with, is he good? Like, either he's good enough and he does it, or either he's not good enough and you put that to bed. So yeah, he fully deserves it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but he had this situation today where I actually saw it on Twitter, and I haven't watched any of the game today, so I'm not going to even lie. I've watched about maybe 20 minutes, if that. And I actually watched Azar's 100, so that's where I watched about 20 minutes around that time. There was a tweet by Jared Kimber saying that it should have been a no ball. So I looked down on his tweet. I had to read through it, and then I saw the mentions and all the comments underneath. And there's images of like Butler's hands being in front of the stumps. So, technically he shouldn't have been out. Let's not make excuses on, like, it wouldn't have been saving us during the test. But I'm not going to make excuses on that. But overall, he might have, this might have been the innings that he might have ended up getting 80 yard. He might have got 100. We don't know that because Azhar batted out, didn't he? So yeah, it's one of them. But yeah, he deserves his go.
And I think that's refreshing to hear because, I mean, as you've said in both now and in previous shows that we've had, you're not his biggest fan. But to obviously hear that from you, that he still deserves a run, he still deserves a go. As you mentioned at the Bangladesh test, that we still need to reschedule, and then New Zealand, that's something that we need to get behind as a team, as fans.
The thing I'm going to add to that is, like, it's not just Fawad and me being like a supporter or not, or whoever the person was. We've done this too much in the past, where we bring players in. Usman Salahuddin is one, Saad Ali's another one. There's been others that have not even played one test. They've been in a squad and just been dropped outright. There's other people who played 1 game, 2 games. What do you gain out of like picking someone for 1 or 2 games? You gain nothing out of it. So with Fawad, let's give him a run and let's see where we are at the end of the run.
Yep. Do you have anything to add to that, Doctor?
No, I agree. I agree. And it's almost, if you think back to, I mean, obviously living in England, you end up finding out a lot about England cricket over the years. And what England used to do a lot, they used to have pick 30 players a summer, get them in, get them out, get them in. Whereas now they've almost shifted their mindset to, you'd rather give players 1 or 2 games more than not giving them kind of enough time to kind of show what they can do. Now, again, I don't want to go on about ages all the time. I mean, Fawad is what, 33, 34? So in terms of an investment for the future, you've not got much to play with. The only thing is, I guess batsmen can play till they're a bit older. So yeah, I agree. I'd much rather give a player 1 or 2 games more than they should have than just. I mean, you mentioned about Saad Ali. Saad Ali's played 2 one-dayers, and that's it in his whole career, and yet he's consistently kind of near the top of the domestic run scorers. So no, I agree. I think Fawad will play, and I think New Zealand away is where he got dropped back in 2009, about 10 years ago now. So it'll be interesting to see how he does out there. It's very difficult to bat out in New Zealand, though. That's the only thing you would say.
Now, to yesterday, it's not just batsmen, is it? It's bowlers as well.
Yeah,
we saw Mir Hamza yesterday. We need to get out that frame mind.
I think one of the things we need to remember is that, yes, coming to England is difficult. Going to New Zealand is difficult. Going to Australia is difficult. But you can't always have an easy series to get bedded in. When you're playing at this level, you have to be prepared to go anywhere, wherever that is, Australia, West Indies, Sri Lanka, South Africa, anywhere. So I think that just because, as you say, New Zealand is going to be difficult, it's make or break for him. But yeah, I agree with you guys that he's done enough to be given a few more innings. And that. Just move on to another question we've had from. So Hasnat Aman says, Azhar Dania cha gaya.
Hasnat actually calls him Danya.
Okay.
What that means, we know Danya as in coriander.
Yeah.
He calls him Danya as in something else. But yeah, Hasnat's probably Azhar's biggest fan. And yesterday he actually messaged in saying that, if he doesn't perform, then maybe this is the end. And today, obviously, as his biggest fan, he must be absolutely buzzing.
He must be loving it. So that brings us on to the next question by Tabrez, who says that, is this potential match-saving innings enough for Azhar to keep the captaincy and his place? So I think that the captaincy that we've spoken about throughout this series, and it's not been the most inspiring captaincy at all, really. But when you look at his from his batting perspective, I mean, I'll come to you both in a minute, but we needed a captain's innings, as we said at the start of the show, and he's proved his mettle. He's shown that he held the innings together, and not only that, when we were forced to follow on, he came out to open the innings. That shows, mental strength. That does, to be able to do that. Do you not think, Doctor?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a tendency, and maybe we've been doing it on the show as well. There's a tendency to look at Azhar and Asad as just one. It's either you have them both or you don't have either. They're at really different positions. So for me, if you get rid of Azhar, you need a new captain and you need a new number 3. I don't see many candidates that I wouldn't put Babar up to 3, and I wouldn't. There's no obvious number 3. If you get rid of Asad, you're getting rid of a number 5 or 6. It's can be a nice place to bat. He's not in a leadership position. He's, as I say, he's faced about 90 balls all series. I was reading a stat. This is the least, his innings today was the least control he's been in for about 2 years or something in any of his innings. So he's getting worse and worse and worse. I don't think someone like Asad can complain if he's dropped. He can't say, well, hold on, give me another chance. He's had a lot of chances. Asad, I think, is different. The way he batted today, it's maybe, I might be completely wrong, but it almost felt like he was batting with a really kind of uncluttered mind. I don't know if he's already thinking that he doesn't want to be captain anymore, and he's already made that decision that, you know what, I don't have to deal with this captaincy stuff anymore. I just want to play as a pure batsman. It looked like he's been batting like he's had the weight of the world on his shoulders. Today, he looked really kind of at ease with himself. After the first 30, 40 balls, it's difficult conditions to bat in anyway. So I think he's just about worth his place in the team. Captaincy, that's a difficult one. I just don't see any obvious candidates to replace him. That's the thing. That's the thing we keep talking about with the captaincy. We don't have that leadership kind of group that other teams do, where you know who the next captain's going to be 2-3 years out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nasser, I think it was, that said on commentary, and I was thinking about this earlier in the day, that if you look back at 2016 when we came over here, Yunus Khan was here. He had a difficult series. But then in the last test match, which I think was down in Oval, which we won to square the series, he came good. I think he scored a double 100 in that one. It's kind of similar to that. But I mean, does his batting warrant him keeping his position? And his captaincy, we've been talking that for a while, haven't we, Imi? Do you think that he deserves to keep the captaincy? And if not, who else is there?
I think we've mentioned this a couple of times. We've always said, try and divert it to let's look at end of the series. I think we're at that point now where we're coming towards the end of the series, and again, it's Babar and there's Shan, and that's the only 2 names I can pick up. Is it too much for one person to be captain in 3 formats, or there's this other argument which I saw today, and basically there's a private message that I got from a friend on WhatsApp, and he said maybe it's time to get Sarfraz back as captain, but there's a but to this. Have Rizwan batting at number 4, and basically Sarfraz takes the keeper's gloves, but then Rizwan is so good with the keeper's gloves as well. It's one of them, like, how'd you do that?
No.
Just speaking on Azhar alone, as Doctor said, it looked like, the captaincy, we mentioned this, I think yesterday, didn't we, that captaincy had probably overwhelmed him, and it was taking effect. I mean, Pakistan cricket could be a dark place anyhow when you're out of form. And then when you add captaincy onto it, and if one of them fields is not going well, it always affects the other one. And I think we finished on yesterday where we said, I really, really hope, for Azhar's sake, that he pulls one off, and he definitely has. I would like to think that he's going to continue, though I think his innings today was probably more of them that I know I'm done as a captain, and I'm going to prove it as a batsman now that I can hold my place as a number 3 in the team.
Yeah, I think it's.
I was just going to say, just for kind of for team management and whoever's in. Well, we know who's in charge, but they need to see Azad is what, is 30, is he 33 or 34, something like that. Azad, I can't remember his exact age, but he's not, he wouldn't have too many years left in Test cricket. So they need to identify now, if Azad doesn't give up the captaincy now, who's going to be the captain in a year's time or 18 months' time. And historically, I think we've been quite bad at this in Pakistan cricket. We need to, you need to identify your leaders early on. And maybe it is Babar, that's fine, but there needs to be some kind of succession planning rather than just, right, Azhar's gone, who's the oldest, just give it to them next. There needs to be a more kind of organised succession plan than what we've seen before.
Yep.
The good thing you said that, before we go back to Pakistan, I remember at the end of Misbah's reign, I actually looked back and I said, Misbah did virtually everything else, but at the end, I looked at it and I said, we never groomed a captain, did we? We had no one ready to take over, and that's why it was given to Sarfraz. And similar with ODIs as well, and we just gave it to Azhar because we were like, who do we give it to? Oh yeah, go and give it to Azhar. So yeah, that's something we really need to look into, grooming the next captain.
Okay, just before we move on to the next question, just want to go back to a point you made, Imi, about Sarfraz. Throughout this series, you know, I've said this to you, I've said this to you before a number of times. To me, a keeper is always a keeper first. I don't care if he gets out for 0 every single innings. I want him to do 0 mistakes as a keeper. Rizwan, from everything I've seen, he's done no mistakes. Everyone's been applauding him, praising him, the commentators, everyone. He's not done anything to be dropped from there. So after this series, when the players go back to Pakistan, if anyone says Sarfraz should be the keeper of this team, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do, because that's just shocking. That just shows you the kind of fickle thinking that we have. You know, there's a guy that's come into the team. It's a position that's difficult in Pakistan specifically, okay? And he's done brilliantly. And as a batting as well, that's a bonus for me. You know, whether you look at Sangakkara, Stewart, Gilchrist, etc., you know, the strong batsmen, he's done brilliantly there. So to take him out now, even if you keep him as a batsman, that's like what we do with Hafiz and Malik, for example. Just go back, you know, years and years and years. I'm not even going to talk about that anymore because it's annoyed me, so I'm moving on. Okay, so just following off on the Azhar one, we got it from Pack Cricket 786. Azhar smashed it, captain's innings, showed his grit and class, happy for him, showed the fight we wanted. Definitely agree with you on that. And then Tabrez has pulled out a stat here where he says, I saw a stat on Twitter earlier today. Azhar has 17 centuries in 81 tests. Compare that to Lakshman, 17 in 134, and Ganguly, 16 in 113. Wow, are fans too harsh on Azhar? Wasn't aware of that. Were you guys?
No. I mean, I saw that stat on Twitter, and it surprised me. I wouldn't have had him having as many centuries as that compared to the other two. I don't think fans have been that harsh on him until recently. I mean, I've been a big fan of Azhar up until past couple of years, but it's difficult to back a guy who's averaging 26 or 27 in all these away series in the past couple of years. People, there's this saying in sport, isn't it? Form is temporary, class is permanent. But that's not necessarily true, because if class is permanent, then Imran Khan can play tomorrow. But it's not. There does come a time where you've reached your peak and you're on the way down, and that is, until today, that was the signs of what was happening to Azhar. So I don't think we're too harsh, but it's he's got. I think he averages something like 50 in home conditions, 42, 43 in away conditions. So he's fifth on our all-time run scorers, or sixth or something. He's got to 6,000 runs today. He'll go down as one of our better players. He's obviously he doesn't play one-day cricket, and he's not a show-off kind of character. So that's why sometimes he gets a bit forgotten, I think, in the world. I mean, you compare that with the media stuff that follows the Indian guys around, and of course there's no comparison.
I think it is the case that he has the captaincy lifted off him. It frees him up to be the batsman that we all know he is. Just moving on to another big point. End of Asad Shafiq. I think it's time to give him a break. I would keep Azhar, give Shan Masood the captaincy. So just looking at Asad Shafiq, one of the surprising things I saw at the beginning of this series was that he's played the longest consecutive test match run ever for Pakistan. 72, 73, I think it was. I was very shocked at that. And when I looked into his actual record, I was surprised. I think his average is only about mid-30s, high 30s, I think, in tests.
38, something like that, and 38 and going down.
Yeah, and 38 and going down. And you would have thought that in this series, when you needed someone to step, because there was a case that he was always in the shadow of Misbah and Misbah and Yunus. And when they retired, he was going to step up. He was going to come out from number 6 and move up to, I don't know, number 3, 4, or 5. And I don't think he's done that, has he?
No, so I think he went to 3 for the, I think there was the West Indies series, possibly in the Emirates, where he went to 3, didn't do particularly well, went back down again to, because they always put his position, averages by position. And so he did go to 3 for a bit. It didn't work at all. He went back down to 6, and he's been okay there down at 6. But even when he's at 6 and he's batting well, again, they're usually pretty inconsequential runs. They're not runs that win us games. And I mean, we've had a couple of chases in the Emirates in the past couple of years against New Zealand and Sri Lanka, both those series that we lost. And there were times when Shafiq could have brought us home, and he didn't. And he consistently, if you're being really cynical, even that massive chase in Brisbane, the 480 chase, even then, he got close, but he didn't get us over the line. Brilliant innings, I know, that's a bit of a harsh one. But again, I just don't see any investment in the future there. He's been a Neely guy for too long. I don't think anyone can complain if it is the end of him for now.
Yeah. What do you think, Amy?
Yeah, I think I saw something. I think we mentioned it. I think during the first test or second test. I think it's 3 of his hundreds, or is it 4 of his hundreds out of the 12 have come in winning causes. Yeah, like that one in Australia, for example, that's a bit harsh to be adding in that. But there's a lot of the runs come in when either the team is doing really, really, really well, and he's coming, say in the UAE where he's coming in when we're 254-4, and it's a lot more easy to bat then. And all his innings have come where we've already lost the game, so the pressure's down. Something that I picked up today on his dismissal, and that's something I have seen. And he, after I think played 9 tests, 10 tests, out of his 76, he still, as he went into that ball, he still went with hard hands. And he still hasn't learned after this many tests in England that one thing that you don't do with the Duke ball, and it's moving around as well, you do never go with hard hands. You sort of let go of your bottom hand and drop the pace. But Wade actually did it a couple of times today, and he learned after one innings that, well, 1 minute, I need to play with softer hands. So there's definitely Asad's point of not learning, and more importantly, not elevating himself yet. He's now our second most experienced batsman in that team, and in some terms you could say most experienced ahead of Azad as well, because he's played 76 games in a row, where Azad hasn't, but they came in a very similar time, and he needed to step up. He hasn't. There's a part of me who thinks he's going to get a 60 odd in the second innings when it doesn't really matter, and this is how it's been for the last 5-6 years of his career, and he will just make the team again in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, that when the chips are down and you need someone to step up, and Asad Shafiq comes out to bat, like Misbah used to come out to bat, like Yunus Khan used to come out to bat, like Inzi did, like Miandad did, what do you think? And at that point, I don't think that many of us are holding out hopes that he's going to be able to take us over the line. So I think that basically says it all. So this question also mentions about giving Sean Masood the captaincy, but if you just look at some of the other ones that we've had here, it's a similar vein where we say that Omar Mirza says Azhar played well, but after today, do you think Shafiq and Masood should get dropped? We've got Saad Malik, who says Sean to be captain, lift the weight off Azhar. Azhar is a class batsman. He has his flaws, but nothing that can't be fixed, as we saw. And Saad Malik also says Sean captained when Azhar was briefly off, so he's the next in line. So Sean, for me, I mean, you guys will know better than me, but I always look at it that a player should have solidified his position in the team first before he's captain. He shouldn't be in the team just because he's captain. And I know that he got a big 100 in the first innings of the first test. He got 150 odd. Since then, I think he's had 1 or 2 ducks, and he hasn't made anything significant since then. We'll see what happens tomorrow if we get any play. But I'm not sure whether he's going to whether he's someone that you can bank on for the next few years to keep his place in the team. But I don't know. What do you think, Doctor, on that?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree, and this is why when it comes to captaincy, Babar might be the only one as the only kind of viable contender, because he's the only one who's like undroppable. If Babar fails for 2 or 3 tests in New Zealand, he isn't getting dropped no matter what. Shan Masood's now failed 3 innings in a row. I'm not saying 3 innings get him out, so I wouldn't drop him. But if he fails for a couple of test matches in New Zealand, with Imam kind of waiting in the wings as well, and Sammy Eslam around again looking at domestic run scorers, Sammy Eslam's up there. Shah will start fearing for his place. And the last thing we need, having just, by that point, we'll have just got rid of Azhar as a captain, fearing for his place, is to swap him for another captain who's fearing for his place. Yeah, I'm not convinced. But the final point I was going to make about Shafiq, just in terms of psychologically, he got out 1 ball before the rain break. And everyone knew that we were going off soon today, that the covers were getting ready, umpires were looking at the sky, and you just think, look, just have a bit more game awareness. So again, psychologically, you want to be able to kind of trust your senior players to have that game awareness. And he got out, poking at one on 5th stump just before the rain break. But yeah, so going back to the captaincy though, I just worry that you're going to swap an out-of-form captain for another one with Shan. I don't think he solidified his place as well as he did in South Africa last year and Australia, I think, as well last year.
Yeah, what do you think, Ellie? I know that you've spoken in support of Sean in the past, but captaincy material?
I think he's ideal as a captain, Sean. I think he'll probably be the most astute captain. But yeah, I understand your point of you've got to solidify your place in the team. He was on the back of like 300s in a row, but then he's had 3 failures in the row. One thing that I have picked up with Sean, and not a lot of people, but I think he played 11 or 12 tests. We think of him like he's been around since 2015 or whatever it is, but he hasn't played a lot of games. This is his first big run, and he gets called Anderson's bunny. I think Anderson just short of 600 wickets had a few of them. So let's be quite realistic with that. There's been a few Anderson's bunnies over the time. So but yeah, I think we have to look at it. My first choice of captain, if I would have to name a captain tomorrow, yeah, again, it's not having a place in the team, but I would look at the future, a longer term. I see Babar in the limited overs. I'm thinking, well, I don't want a captain for 3 format. The other one that I would consider is Shadab. But again, he's not in the team at the moment, so that's the problem. But I see captaincy material in Shadab. I see a leader. I see someone who leads by example, someone who would fight for the team. But that's a very much a long stretch anyhow.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point you bring up. That Shadab, he's on the cusp of getting his position in the team, isn't he? And I just think back to Graham Smith. When he came into the South African side, he was made captain in his early 20s. And I remember thinking at the time that I was really shocked that who's this guy that South Africa made captain. But you never know, one of those bold moves might pay off. We don't shy away from throwing teenagers into the playing 11. Maybe that's something that we could do. But I do think that once the series is over and everyone goes back to Pakistan, there's going to be some big questions to be asked around that. Mm-hmm. Just moving on, we've got Umar Ashraf says that Hulkistan may turn green if someone pushes Safraz's selection. So you've all been warned, is all I can say on that. Again, we've got Saad Malik, who says, don't agree with many things with the Ramiz, but his point of Safraz focusing on white ball, I agree with. So that's going to be an interesting thing that when we move on to the T20s, I'm not sure, is Rizwan in the squad for that, for the 2020?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll be interesting to see who they actually pick as a keeper, because, as I mentioned, Rizwan hasn't put a foot wrong in keeping. Do you think that Safraz should come back as a keeper?
I think when they came here, I think it was that idea, Rizwan test, Safraz T20s. Rizwan didn't have a very good T20 series in Australia. He got dropped in the PSL as well by Karachi Kings. So he started the series, but he wasn't good enough with the bat. So I think Safraz will play the T20s, but it's a nice problem to have. Finally, we've got an option with keeping, and before I finish up, because I need to go. I'll make a big statement here, but I think just on this keeping alone, because what we associate with keepers now, as you said, is their batting. Every time we talk about a keeper, we say, oh, this one's the best keeper in the world, but they look at the person with the bat and not just with the gloves. But if I look just solely with the gloves, I would rate him the best keeper in the world at the moment.
Who, Rizwan?
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's just solely with the gloves.
Yeah, but so on that point, for the T20s, should it be Rizwan keeping, or should Sarfraz take his place in white ball in the 2020s with England?
I think it's going to be Sarfraz, okay. But I would seriously consider Rizwan at 4, or even at 3. Okay. I would seriously consider that. That's not going to happen. We'll discuss that later in the week here when we do the T20 things. Okay. I think there's a couple of seniors that are going to come back in and walk in.
So I know you've got to go to me. So there's a question that's flashed up for you. So I'll let you read it.
Second wedding. That is not my second wedding.
Congratulations.
It's my cousin's nikah. So basically,
Mubarak to Imi's cousin.
Yeah, I'm basically outside my cousin's house right now. I've got my cousin's house keys, and they're not back yet. And basically, I've arranged all the food and everything else, and so now I've just come out because my kids are inside. Because of the COVID situation, there's only limited people that were allowed to go, and limited people were allowed at home. So yeah, I'm basically just dressed as accordingly. But yeah, it's not my wedding, and don't let my wife hear that either.
Okay, just move on to the next. So by Tabre saying that I agree with
I'm
Dr.
gonna shoot.
Okay.
So
thank you very much, Imi. Welcome. Tabre says I agree with